the memory glitch that's quietly rewriting who you are. Chapter 1. The illusion of perfect recall. Picture this. You're at your high school reunion, laughing with old friends about that time you accidentally started a food fight in the cafeteria. Everyone's cracking up, adding details you'd forgotten. But as you drive home, something nags at you. You weren't the one who threw the first handful of mashed potatoes. You were sitting 3 tables away, watching it happen. So why do you remember it so vividly? Why can you still feel the weight of those potatoes in your hand? We like to think of memory as a high-definition video recorder, faithfully capturing and storing every significant moment of our lives in perfect detail. We imagine our brains as vast libraries, where experiences sit unchanged on dusty shelves, waiting to be retrieved exactly as they occurred. But neuroscience has revealed a disturbing truth that challenges everything we thought we knew about ourselves. Every time you remember something, you're not just recalling it. You're actively rewriting it. Dr. Karim Nader at McGill University discovered something that fundamentally shook the foundations of memory research. When you retrieve a memory from storage, it doesn't just get copied and pasted back into your consciousness unchanged. Instead, the memory becomes temporarily unstable, chemically vulnerable to modification and contamination. It's called memory reconsolidation, and it reveals that the very act of remembering is actually a form of forgetting and reconstructing. Think about your most cherished childhood memory right now, the one that defines who you are, the story you've told 100 times at family gatherings and first dates. Maybe it's the day your grandfather taught you to fish, or the moment you scored the winning goal, or the afternoon you spent building a fort with your siblings. Here's the uncomfortable truth that neuroscientists have uncovered: that treasured memory probably bears little resemblance to what actually happened. Each time you've recalled that moment, whether to yourself in quiet reflection or to others in animated storytelling, you've inadvertently edited it. Your brain has subtly adjusted details, enhanced emotions, and smoothed over inconsistencies. The memory has been influenced by your current mood, your present beliefs about yourself, your evolving understanding of what that moment meant in the larger story of your life. This isn't a bug in the system, it's a feature. Your brain isn't trying to be a historian, it's trying to be a survival mechanism. It prioritizes usefulness over accuracy, meaning over precision. But the implications of this discovery extend far beyond academic curiosity. If our memories are constantly being rewritten, and if our memories form the foundation of our identity, then who exactly are we? Chapter 2. The architecture of false memory. This isn't just about forgetting where you put your keys or mixing up the details of last week's meeting. This is about the fundamental stories that make you who you are. And these stories are being quietly edited every single day without your knowledge or consent. Elizabeth Loftus, a pioneering memory researcher at UC Irvine, has spent decades demonstrating just how malleable human memory really is. In her most famous experiment, she managed to convince participants that they had been lost in a shopping mall as children, a completely fabricated event that never happened. The process was surprisingly simple. She enlisted family members to plant the false memory during casual conversation, mixing it in with real childhood stories. Within just a few weeks, participants weren't just accepting the false memory as real. They were embellishing it with rich, emotional details. They could describe the color of the shirt they wore that day, the growing sense of panic as they realized they were alone, the relief they felt when a kind stranger helped them find their parents. Some participants became so attached to these manufactured memories that they refused to believe they were false even after the experiment was explained to them. But here's what's truly unsettling about Loftus's research. It's not just scientists in controlled laboratory settings who can implant false memories. Your own brain is constantly running this same experiment on itself, every single day. Every conversation you have about your past, every photo you look at, every story you tell about yourself becomes an opportunity for memory contamination. When your sister reminds you about that family vacation when you were 8, her version of events subtly influences your own recollection. When you see an old photograph from high school, the emotions you feel in that moment of viewing color your memory of what you felt back then. The process is so subtle that you never notice it happening. You don't feel your memories changing. They feel just as real and vivid as they ever did. In fact, false memories often feel more real than authentic ones because they've been polished and refined through repeated mental rehearsal. Consider how this plays out in your daily life. Every time you tell a story about yourself, you're performing for an audience, even if that audience is just you. A funny story becomes slightly funnier with each telling as you unconsciously emphasize the parts that get the biggest laughs. A traumatic event becomes more traumatic as you focus on the most dramatic elements. A moment of personal triumph becomes more heroic as you downplay the role of luck and circumstance. Each retelling shifts the memory just slightly, like a photograph left in sunlight that slowly fades and changes color. The alterations are so gradual that you never notice them happening, but over time, the cumulative effect can be enormous. A minor childhood embarrassment can transform into a defining moment of shame. A casual compliment can evolve into life-changing encouragement. A moment of fear can become a story of courage. Chapter 3. The Identity Crisis. So who are you, really? If your memories, which form the very foundation of your sense of identity, are constantly being rewritten without your awareness, what does that say about the person you believe yourself to be? This question strikes at the heart of human consciousness and self-understanding. We construct our identities largely through autobiographical memory, through the stories we tell ourselves about who we've been and what we've experienced. These stories don't just describe our past, they actively shape our present behavior and future aspirations. Consider this scenario. You might have a clear memory of being the shy, awkward kid in school who was always picked last for teams and ate lunch alone. This memory has become central to your adult identity. It explains your career in behind-the-scenes work, your preference for small gatherings over large parties, your tendency to underestimate your own social skills. But what if that memory is largely constructed? What if you weren't actually that shy? What if one particularly embarrassing moment in 7th grade got magnified through years of retelling and rumination until it became your entire origin story? The implications are staggering. Your whole adult personality might be built around compensating for or embracing a childhood experience that existed more in your imagination than in reality. You might be living your life as a reaction to events that never happened the way you remember them. Or consider a different example. Maybe you remember your father as emotionally distant and cold, never present for important moments in your childhood. This memory drives your parenting style today. You're determined to be the involved, emotionally available parent that you never had. But what if your brain has systematically edited out thousands of small moments of warmth and connection? What if you've unconsciously discarded memories of bedtime stories and backyard games and quiet conversations, leaving only the sharp edges of disappointment and absence? This selective editing isn't malicious. it's often protective. Our brains are remarkably good at constructing coherent narratives that help us make sense of complex, contradictory experiences. If seeing your father as distant helps explain other aspects of your childhood or motivates positive changes in your own parenting, your brain might unconsciously emphasize memories that support this narrative while downplaying ones that contradict it. The result is that the person you are today is built on a foundation of memories that may never have existed the way you remember them. You're not just living your life, you're living a story that your brain has been quietly editing and refining for decades. Every decision you make, every relationship you form, every goal you pursue is influenced by these potentially fictional memories. Chapter 4. The Collective Delusion. This isn't just a personal problem, it's a collective one that shapes families, communities, and entire cultures. We don't just edit our own memories in isolation. We share these edited versions with others, creating webs of mutual reinforcement that make false memories feel even more real. Think about how differently people remember the same shared events. Couples often have completely different recollections of how they met, what their first date was like, or who said what during important conversations. Siblings can have radically conflicting memories of their childhood, as if they grew up in entirely different families. Witnesses to the same crime or accident routinely give wildly contradictory testimonies, each person absolutely convinced that their version is accurate. This phenomenon extends beyond individual relationships to shape entire societies. Historical events get filtered through collective memory in ways that often bear little resemblance to what actually happened. Cultural myths and national narratives emerge from this process of collective memory editing, creating shared stories that bind communities together, even when those stories are largely fictional. Social media has accelerated this process exponentially. When you post about an experience on Facebook or Instagram, you're not just sharing a memory, you're crystallizing and potentially distorting it. The act of selecting which photos to share, crafting the perfect caption, and reading friends' comments all influence how you remember the event. The version that gets the most likes and comments becomes the official version in your mind, even if it's far from what actually happened. The comments and reactions from others become incorporated into your memory of the event itself. A vacation that felt mediocre while you were living it can transform into an amazing adventure through the alchemy of social media curation and positive feedback. Conversely, a genuinely good experience might be remembered as disappointing if it doesn't generate the online engagement you expected. Chapter 5. Living with the Glitch. So what do you do with this knowledge? How do you live authentically when you can't trust your own memories? How do you make decisions about your future when your understanding of your past might be largely fiction? The first step is accepting that this isn't a problem to be solved. It's a fundamental feature of human consciousness that we need to learn to navigate. Your memories aren't just passive recordings of what happened. They're active constructions that your brain uses to create meaning, maintain psychological coherence, and guide future behavior. This doesn't mean that all memories are equally false or that the past doesn't matter. Many memories, especially those that are frequently rehearsed or particularly significant, retain important elements of truth even if the details have been altered. The key is developing a more nuanced relationship with your own recollections, holding them lightly rather than grasping them tightly. Perhaps the answer isn't to fix the glitch, but to embrace it thoughtfully. Your memories, even if they're not perfectly accurate, have shaped you into who you are today. They've given you resilience, wisdom, relationships, and purposes that are real, regardless of whether the originating events happened exactly as you remember them. The goal isn't to achieve perfect memory. It's to develop wisdom about the nature of memory itself. When you understand that your recollections are constructions rather than recordings, you can begin to take more conscious control over the editing process. You can choose which stories about yourself to emphasize and which to downplay. You can actively seek out perspectives that challenge your existing narratives. You can hold space for the possibility that your enemies weren't as cruel and your heroes weren't as perfect as you remember. In the end, the memory glitch that's quietly rewriting who you are isn't a bug. It's the very mechanism by which you become who you choose to be. The question isn't whether your memories are accurate. It's whether they're serving you well in creating the life you want to live.